The hour for convening having arrived, all members will please report to the floor and take their seats. All members of the House will please report to the floor and take your seats. The clerk will please ring the bell. All members will please report to the floor. We're going to have the morning roll call. All members present will please vote green to signify their presence in the chamber, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. Doorkeepers will close the doors and keep them closed. Well, good morning. Hope everyone had a nice weekend and back and ready to go to work. We got a busy, full week. So we're going to begin our day with scripture reading and prayer by the chaplain, after which we will pledge allegiance to the flag of our country. Our chaplain this morning will be introduced by the gentleman from the 100th House District, Representative Dewey McLean. Representative McLean.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Good morning, colleagues. I have the honor and pleasure of introducing the chaplain of the day, my spiritual advisor and good friend, Pastor Richard B. Haynes of Salem Missionary Baptist Church in Lilburn, Georgia. Pastor Haynes is a native of Gainesville, Georgia, and the son of a Baptist minister. Pastor Haynes has been at Salem Missionary Baptist Church since 1988. When he first came to Salem in 1988, there was only 100 members, but today there's over 4,500 members at Salem. Salem is one of the oldest and largest African-American congregations in Gwinnett County. You know, it's an honor also to realize that one of our House members is Pastor Haynes' member, and that's House District 108 in Lilburn, Georgia, and that's Dr. Jasmine Clark is a member of Salem Missionary Baptist Church, and do hope that she'll join us at the end. Thank you for allowing me to borrow my spiritual advisor for today. Pastor Haynes has brought with him his wife of 35 years, First Lady, Miss Beverly Haynes, who's also a member of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated. Nice warm welcome for her. He also has his son, Jason Haynes, who's also a Baptist minister. So therefore what you've got is his grandfather, his father, and now him as a minister. Please give him a nice warm welcome, house welcome. This is Jason. Thank you, colleagues, and Pastor Haynes.
Thank you, Representative McLean, thank you, Speaker Ross, for the opportunity, Ralston, for this opportunity to be here today. Scripture from the Word of God, simply one verse, John 5:12. Merely says this: gather up the fragments that remain, that nothing be lost. I want just for a moment to think on this thought: fragmented yet valued. Fragmented yet valued. In this fast-paced electronic cyber age we live in, where everything is either instant, temporary, or plastic, the world finds itself in a strange place. We're being overrun with garbage. As a matter of fact, in the world right now, there is a garbage crisis. And as so many things, positive and negative, America leads the way. America produces more garbage than any other nation in the world. Said another way, we throw away more stuff than anybody. But while that is true, Americans are the least aware of the garbage crisis. And studies have shown why. It's because America has the most advanced garbage collection system in the world. And the reason garbage is not problematic to us is because we don't have to look at it. Our garbage is conveniently picked up at the curb in front of the house, most of the time on a weekly basis. There's no cost. Well, there is a cost, but the cost is not based on how much you throw away. And most of the time, the cost is tied into another utility. They carry it away, and rarely do we ever see the place where they take it, nor do we want to see it. The truth is, God has blessed us so much that we have come to a place where we throw away what we used to fix. When was the last time you saw somebody darn socks? When was the last time you saw somebody put cardboard in a shoe or patch up a pair of pants? Who saves jelly jars anymore? It's just where we are as a society. But I'm beginning to wonder, my brothers and sisters, I'm beginning to wonder if we have come to a place in this fast-paced, throwaway society that we've even become insensitive to broken people. I'm beginning to wonder, as a society, if we have not come to a point where we find it easier to dispose of broken folk than to see to their repair. Like our garbage, if we can just get them out of our sight, we don't even mind contributing a little something to somebody else to deal with them. We all have a lot of growing to do in this area, even the community of faith. After all, for those of us who follow after Christ, for the least of these is at the top of our list of responsibilities. But I believe that here in Scripture, Jesus is sending a loud message to all of us as he speaks to his disciples after feeding over 5,000 folk. A message about not being wasteful, about learning how to appreciate all that God gives. Jesus says, gather up the fragments, that nothing be lost. He is just taking a little boy's lunch, 2 fish, 5 barley loaves of bread, fed over 5,000 folk. Somehow a miracle took place. Everybody in the crowd, over 5,000 folk, had plenty to eat. But then there's another miracle. There was food left over. And here it is. Here's where I want to get to. Jesus says to his disciples, go now, gather up the fragments, that nothing be lost. And listen to his rationale. Listen to his rationale. The people are full now. And since they're full, they won't see the value in broken pieces of fish and bread. They're full. They'll walk away and leave it on the ground because now they are full. But disciples, what I need you to do, go gather up the broken pieces so that nothing will be lost. And every time I read the passage, it carries me back to our attitudes about broken people and broken lives. In my mind, and in my thinking, if Jesus has this kind of interest in not wasting broken pieces of bread and fish, how much more concerned is he with how we handle broken people? You see, the overall message to the disciples is, and to us right now, is that fish and bread does not lose its value because it's broken. Doesn't lose its value because it's fragmented. It's still fish and bread. Still had the same nutrients. How wonderful would it be if we can all just develop the same attitude toward fragmented lives? Yes, they may be broken, they may be tattered, they may be torn, but they still have value. How wonderful would it be for all of us, especially those in the community of faith, we go back and remember why Jesus came to earth. Jesus didn't come looking for folk who had it together. Jesus came for the poor, the hopeless, the downtrodden. Jesus came picking up broken pieces. Ask me how I know. It's because that's where he found me. I was broken, tattered, and torn, but Jesus picked up the pieces. May we all strive to see the value in even those fragmented lives. Let us pray. Lord, we thank you for a brand new day, which marks a brand new beginning. We thank you for all of the wonderful possibilities and opportunities that this new day brings. Opportunities to correct mistakes from yesterday and to build on yesterday's success. We pray for this body, that you will keep them safe, that you will keep them healthy, that you will bless their families as they go about the business of governing. Bless this great state of Georgia, this nation, and this world. Bless all who have the responsibility of governance over the affairs that affect the lives and well-being of your precious creation. We pray this in the name of Jesus. Amen. Will you join me now in the pledge to the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Doorkeepers will unlock the doors. The chair recognizes Chairman Taylor, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits.
Mr. Speaker, your Committee on Information and Audits have read the proceedings of the previous legislative day and found them to be correct.
Chairman Taylor, the chair of the Committee on Information and Audits, reports that the journal of the previous legislative day has been read and found to be correct. Is there any objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none and the journal is confirmed. The clerk will read the resolution establishing the order of business for the day.
Mr. Burns, 159th, moves following be established as the order of business in the first part of the period. Unanimous consents. Introduction to bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of House bills and resolutions. Second reading of bills and resolutions. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions. Morning orders.
Is there any objection to the adoption of the resolution establishing the order of business for the day? The chair hears none and the resolution is adopted. First reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 208 by Representative McCullough, 33rd, Nix to the 69th, Trammell, 132nd, Smith to the 133rd, and Nulowitz to the 42nd, and others. Bill being titled Act to amend Title 36 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to local government.
Energy, telecommunications, and public utilities.
House Bill 209 by Representative Gamble of the 15th, England of the 116th, Dempsey of the 13th, Blackman of the 146th, Gaines of the 117th. Bill being titled an act to amend Code Section 4286 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to special license plates.
Motor vehicles.
House Bill 210 by Representative McLeod of the 105th, McLean of the 110th, Bruce of the 61st, Carpenter of the 4th, Walensky the 79th, and others. Bill being titled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to elections and primaries.
Governmental affairs.
House Bill 211 by Representative McLeod of the 105th, Bruce of the 61st, Shannon of the 84th, Dreyer of the 59th, Paris of the 142nd, and others. Bill being titled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to elections.
Governmental affairs.
House Bill 212 by Representative Perkle of the 155th, Houston of the 170th, Rhodes of the 120th, Wiedauer of the 119th, Barr of the 103rd. Bill being titled an act to amend Article 13, Chapter 1 of Title 7 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to licensing of mortgage lenders.
Banks and banking.
House Bill 213 by Representative Corbett of the 174th, McCall of the 33rd, Pruitt of the 149th, Gilliard of the 162nd, Dickey of the 140th. Bill being titled an act to amend Title 2 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to agriculture.
Agriculture and consumer affairs.
House Bill 214 by Representative Stevens of the 164th. Bill being titled an act to amend Code Section 4334, 26.1 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to vaccine protocols.
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 215 by Representative Nulowitz of the 42nd, Kelly of the 16th, Walensky the 79th, Stevens the 164th, Wen of the 89th. Bill being titled an act to amend Code Section 12.3, 114 and Title 40 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to policies to guide Department of Natural Resources.
Natural Resources and Environment.
House Bill 216 by Representative Nulowitz of the 42nd. Bill being titled an act to amend Code Section 4286 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to special license plates.
Motor vehicles.
House Bill 217 by Representative Gaines, the 117th, Cooper, the 43rd, Newton, the 122nd, Silcox, the 52nd, Dempsey, the 13th, and others. Bill being titled an act to amend Code Section 161332, the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to transactions and drug-related objects.
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 218 by Representative Williams, the 145th, Jaspers, the 11th, Gamble of the 15th, Holcomb of the 81st, Earhart of the 36th, and others. Bill being titled an act to amend Part 7 of Article 7 of Chapter 3 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia Annotated relating to Hope Scholarships.
Higher Education.
House Bill 219 by Representative Smith of the 70th, Knight of the 130th, Watson of the 172nd, Corbett of the 174th, McCall of the 33rd, and others. Bill being entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 5 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating the general provisions regarding ad valorem taxation.
Ways and Means.
House Bill 220 by Representative Rogers. The 10th Laricia of the 169th reads the 34th and lot of the 122nd. Bill being entitled an act to amend Part 1 of Article 2 of Chapter 8 of Title 12 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating the general provisions regarding solid waste.
Natural Resources and Environment.
House Bill 221 by Representative Rogers. The 10th Laricia of the 169th reads the 34th lot of the 122nd Smyrie of the 35th and others. Bill being entitled an act to amend Article 3 of Chapter 9 of Title 10 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to revenue bonds.
Ways and Means.
House Bill 222 by Representative McLeod of the 105th, Trammell of the 132nd, Bruce of the 61st, Clark of the 108th, Lopez Romero of the 99th and others. Bill being entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 21 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to primaries and elections generally.
Governmental Affairs.
House Bill 223 by Representative Dickey of the 140th, McCall of the 33rd, England of the 116th, Dubnik of the 29th, Smith of the 70th. Bill being entitled an act to amend Chapter 14 to Title 12 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to oil or hazardous material spills.
Natural Resources and Environment.
House Bill 224 by Representative Williamson of the 115th, Kelly of the 16th, Powell of the 171st, Harold of the 106th, Meeks of the 178th, and others. Bill being entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating the imposition rate computation and exemptions from state income tax.
Ways and Means.
House Bill 225 by Representative Rich of the 97th, Rogers of the 10th, Jaspers of the 11th, Gullett of the 19th, Mathis of the 144th, and others. Bill being entitled an act to amend Code Section 41(8) of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to safe operations of motor carriers.
Motor Vehicles.
House Bill 226 by Representative Laricia of the 169th, Rogers of the 10th, Reeves of the 34th, Lott of the 122nd, McCall of the 33rd. Bill being entitled an act to amend Code Section 1521(179) of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to additional penalty for violation of traffic laws.
Motor Vehicles.
House Bill 227 by Representative Fry of the 118th, Buckner of the 137th, Cannon of the 58th, Smith of the 41st, Wen of the 89th, and others. Bill being entitled an act to amend Code Section 33(6)(4) the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating the enumeration of unfair methods of competition.
Insurance.
House Bill 228 by Representative Welch of the 110th, Ballinger of the 23rd, Jones of the 47th, Oliver of the 82nd, Holcomb of the 81st, and others. Bill being entitled an act to amend Chapter 3 of Title 19 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to marriage.
Juvenile Justice.
House Bill 229 by Representative Buckner of the 137th, Robichaud of the 48th, Hutchinson of the 107th, and Frye of the 118th. Bill being entitled an act to amend Code Section 35(3)(34) of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to disclosure and dissemination of criminal records.
Judiciary.
House Bill 230 by Representative Holcomb of the 81st, Gamble of the 15th, Oliver of the 82nd, Walensky of the 79th, Wilson of the 80th, and others. Bill being entitled an act to amend Chapter 2 of Title 14 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to business corporations.
Judiciary.
House Bill 231 by Representative Clark of the 147th, Petrie of the 166th, Myrie of the 135th, Smith of the 134th, Blackman of the 146th, and others. The bill will be titled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating the imposition rate, computation, and exemptions from state income taxes.
Ways and Means.
House Bill 232 by Representative Clark of the 147th, Belton of the 112th, Blackman of the 146th, Hitchens of the 161st, Prince of the 127th, and others. Bill being entitled an act to amend Chapter 3 and 4 of Title 20 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to post-secondary education.
Higher Education.
House Bill 233 by Representative Knight of the 130th, England of the 116th, Hatchett of the 150th, Cooper of the 43rd, Powell of the 32nd, and others. Bill being entitled an act to amend Article 6 of Chapter 4, Title 26 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to pharmacies.
Health and Human Services.
House Bill 234 by Representative F. Stration of the 104th, Ballinger of the 23rd, Smyrie 135th, Welch of the 110th, Silcox of the 52nd, and others. Bill being entitled an act to amend Titles 9, 15, 16, 17, and 41 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to civil practice.
Juvenile Justice.
House Resolution 165 by Representative Green of the 151st, Donahue the 30th, Perkle the 155th, Watson the 172nd, Smith of the 41st, and others. A resolution authorizing the conveyance of certain state-owned real property.
State properties.
House Resolution 166 by Representative Scott of the 76th, Bernal the 77th, Stovall the 74th, Schofield the 60th, and Davis of the 87th. A resolution creating the House Study Committee on Veteran Services and Benefits.
Defense and Veterans Affairs.
House Resolution 181 by Representative Fry, the 118th, Kendrick of the 93rd, Smith of the 41st, Holly the 111th, Douglas the 78th, and others. A resolution applying to Congress for a limited national convention.
Rules.
Senate Resolution 19 by Senator Beach of the 21st, Gooch of the 51st, Watson the 1st, Miller of the 49th, and Dugan of the 30th. A resolution creating the Georgia Commission on Freight and Logistics.
Transportation.
That completes first readers.
Second reading of bills and resolutions. The clerk will read.
House Bill 3 by Representative Gertler of the 8th, Cook of the 18th, Caldwell of the 20th, Moore of the 1st, Donohue of the 30th, a bill relating to excise tax on rooms, lodgings, and accommodations. House Bill 177 by Representative Caldwell of the 20th, a bill relating to limitations of actions on recovery for deficiencies connected with improvements to realty and resulting injuries. House Bill 178 by Representative Hogan of the 179th, Hawkins of the 27th, Stevens of the 164th, Dempsey of the 13th, Blackman of the 146th, and others, a bill relating to examination and treatment for mental illness. House Bill 179 by Representative Moore of the 1st, Poland of the 131st, Donohue of the 30th, and Tarvin of the 2nd. A bill relating to indicators of quality of learning in individual schools and school systems. House Bill 180 by Representative Caldwell of the 20th, Welch of the 110th, Blackman of the 146th, Kelly of the 16th, Werkheiser of the 157th, and others. A bill to repeal provisions creating inactive boards, panels, authorities, centers, commissions, committees, councils, task forces, and other such bodies. House Bill 181 by Representative Mitchell of the 88th, a bill relating to Charter School Act of 1998. House Bill 182 by Representative Harold of the 106th, Williamson of the 115th, Stevens of the 164th, and Knighton of the 160th. A bill relating to sales and use tax. House Bill 183 by Representative Harold of the 106th, Knight of the 130th, Williamson of the 115th, and Stevens of the 164th. A bill relating to ad valorem taxation of property. House Bill 184 by Representative Harold of the 106th, Powell of the 171st, England of the 116th, and Williamson of the 115th, a bill relating to local government. House Bill 185 by Representative Williamson of the 115th and Fraser of the 126th, a bill relating to financial institutions. House Bill 186 by Representative Stevens of the 164th, Gilliard of the 162nd, Petrie of the 166th, Hitchens of the 161st, Stevens of the 165th, and others, a bill relating to county and municipal hospital authorities. House Bill 187 by Representative Dempsey of the 13th, Cooper of the 43rd, Newton of the 123rd, Jones of the 53rd, and Hatchett of the 150th, a bill relating to the Department of Community Health. House Bill 188 by Representative Shannon of the 84th, Cannon of the 58th, Clark of the 108th, Stevenson of the 90th, Wynn of the 89th, and others, a bill relating to health. House Bill 189 by Representative Smith of the 133rd, Harold of the 106th, Tanner of the 9th, Corbett of the 174th, Bentley of the 139th, a bill relating to sales and use taxes. House Bill 190 by Representative Williams of the 145th, Jones of the 167th, Hill of the 3rd, Williams of the 168th, and Hughley of the 136th, and others, a bill relating to employees engaged in operation of trains. House Bill 191 by Representative Kendrick of the 93rd, Stover of the 71st, Stovall of the 74th, and Jones of the 91st, a bill relating to primaries and elections. House Bill 192 by Representative Powell of the 32nd, Washburn of the 141st, Ridley of the 6th, and Bonner of the 72nd, a bill relating to real estate appraisers. House Bill 193 by Representative Donohue of the 30th, Smyre of the 135th, Hitchens of the 161st, Rutledge of the 109th, Hawkins of the 27th, and others, a bill relating to provisions applicable to the Department of Banking and Finance and Financial Institutions. House Bill 194 by Representative Watson of the 172nd, Powell of the 171st, Taylor of the 173rd, a bill to provide a new charter for the city of Meigs in Thomas County. House Bill 195 by Representative Benton of the 31st, a bill relating to retirement, retirement allowances, disability benefits, death benefits relative to the Georgia Firefighters Pension Fund. House Bill 196 by Representative Benton of the 31st, a bill relating to general provisions relative to retirement and pensions. House Bill 197 by Representative Dempsey of the 13th, Houston of the 170th, Gardner of the 57th, England of the 116th, Powell of the 171st, a bill relating to the Office of Planning and Budget. House Bill 198 by Representative Hatchett of the 150th, England of the 116th, Powell of the 171st, Bazemore of the 63rd, Houston of the 170th, and others, a bill related to health. House Bill 199 by Representative Wilkerson of the 38th, a bill relating to imposition rate computation exemptions from state income tax. House Bill 200 by Representative Hogan of the 179th, Stevens of the 164th, Hawkins of the 27th, Donohue of the 30th, Hill of the 3rd, and others, a bill relating to excise tax on rooms, lodging, and accommodations. House Bill 201 by Representative Hogan of the 179th, Petrie of the 166th, Williams of the 148th, Mathiak of the 73rd, Williams of the 168th, and others. A bill relating to waters of the state, ports, and watercraft. House Bill 202 by Representative Petrie of the 166th, Hitchens of the 161st, Clark of the 147th, Powell of the 32nd, Williamson of the 115th, and others. A bill relating to penal institutions. House Bill 203 by Representative Bennett of the 94th, Smyre of the 135th, Belton of the 112th, Hitchens of the 161st, Frazier of the 126th, and others. A bill relating to imposition rate computation exemptions from state income taxes. House Bill 204 by Representative Mitchell of the 88th, Henson of the 86th, Couch of the 50th, Cooper of the 43rd, Walensky of the 79th, and others. A bill relating to sales and use taxes. House Bill 205 by Representative Mitchell of the 88th, the bill relating to driver's licenses. House Bill 206 by Representative Mitchell of the 88th, the bill relating to the Charter Schools Act of 1998. House Bill 207 by Representative Mitchell of the 88th, the bill relating to general provisions regarding the uniform rules of the road. House Resolution 164 by Representative Powell of the 171st, Williamson of the 115th, Welch of the 110th, Stevens of the 164th, Trammell of the 132nd, and others. Resolution proposing amendments to the Constitution so as to authorize the General Assembly to provide by general law for the dedication of revenues derived from fees or taxes to the public purpose for which such fees or taxes were imposed. Senate Bill 7 by Senator Jones of the 10th, Butler of the 55th, Parent of the 42nd, Anderson of the 43rd, Davenport of the 44th, and others. Bill to amend an act revising, superseding, consolidating the laws relating to the governing authority of DeKalb County. Senate Bill 25 by Senator Heath of the 31st, a bill relating to duty of driver of vehicles meeting or overtaking school bus, reporting violations, civil monetary penalty for violations captured by school bus camera. Senate Bill 53 by Senator Jones of the 10th, Butler of the 55th, Anderson of the 43rd, Harrell of the 40th, Parent of the 42nd, and others. A bill relating to amend an act to create and establish in DeKalb County districts in which the members of the County Board of Education shall be elected. Through second readers.
There are no reports of standing committees. We're going on now to morning orders. We're going on now to morning orders. If you have signed up for a morning order, be on standby. Members of the House will remain in their seats and keep conversation out of the chamber. Take it to the anterooms and the hallways. Give attention and respect to the members in the well for morning orders. Morning orders this morning will be limited to 2 minutes each. Chair recognizes Chairman Benton for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, today is February the 11th. On this date in 1796, my home county of Jackson was created. That makes it 223 years old and is the 22nd oldest county in Georgia. It was named for General James Jackson, who was a Revolutionary War hero. He was twice governor, a U.S. congressman, and twice United States senator. The county was originally 1,800 square miles. In 1801, the General Assembly granted 40,000 acres in Jackson County for a state college. Classes began that year, and Athens grew up around the college. In 1803, Clark County was created from Jackson. In 1811, Jackson lost more territory in the creation of Madison County. In 1818, again, Walton, Gwinnett, and Hall. In 1858, Banks County. And in 1914, Barrow County, all created from Jackson County. Famous citizens from Jackson County, U.S. Senator Richard Russell was born in Jackson County. Crawford W. Long did his famous surgery of learning that ether was an anesthetic, downtown Jefferson. Admiral David McDonald was Chief of Naval Operations. Famous painter Mattie Lou O'Kelly was born in Jackson County. And Claire Merritt Ruth, the second wife of Babe Ruth, was from Jackson County. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Chair recognizes Chairman Hitchens for a morning order.
Good morning. I rise today to speak to an issue that came to be very important to me. It started off kind of funny. I got a message on Facebook from somebody who wasn't my friend, who decided that she wanted to talk about the density of female breast tissue. Subsequent to that, she started talking to me about her army, and I wondered exactly where she was coming from. I contacted her back. She gave me her phone number. We started texting, and she had a serious problem. She lived in my district, and she went to high school with my son, and I really did know her, but when she became 40 years old, she started getting mammograms in accordance with normal medical protocol. Every one of them passed for several years, and on self-examination, she noticed that she had a lump, and it became sore to the touch, and increasingly so she sought further medical diagnostics. Turns out she had breast cancer, and the reason for that is when you have dense breast tissue, and about 40% of the women in this country have dense breast tissue, it's very difficult on a mammogram to be able to see those lumps. So her name is Margie Singleton. She's gone through her process with cancer and still undergoing treatment. But she not only went through this herself, but she wants to put something in place to stop other women from having to undergo the same process. And she does have an army. I found out Margie's army is alive and well in Savannah, Georgia. And Margie's here with us today, and her bill is going to be on the floor. It's come to be known as Margie's bill. Margie, would you please stand up? And Margie's army is with her. So some of them, I think there are a couple of hundred of them. They had a fundraiser not too long ago, a golf tournament. They raised a lot of money, but don't ever underestimate the power of a lot of women. I've been married 50 years, and I listen to what my wife says. So thank you very much.
Chair recognizes Chairman Fleming for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, we have some special guests with us today up in the balcony. Today is Court Reporters Day at the Capitol. Any of your constituents that ever have to use our judicial system in Georgia is well aware that one of the most important persons in the courtroom, or possibly even outside of the courtroom, is the court reporter. They take down the official record of everything that happens during a proceeding. They have an association here in Georgia where they organize to make sure they continue to do a good job for us, and some of their officers are with us in the gallery this morning, and I'd like for them to stand up so I can recognize them. I believe we have Matthew Moss from Cumming, Chanara Perlow from Atlanta, Marcia Arberman from Lilburn, Patrick Stevens from Duluth, Denithia Magici from Decatur. Thank you all so much for being with us today, and we appreciate what you do for our constituents in the state of Georgia. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Kennard for a morning order.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Georgia was represented well last night at the 61st Grammys. Donald Glover, raised in Stone Mountain, aka Childish Gambino, won 3 Grammys for his song This Is America, including Song and Record of the Year. This was historic in the fact that the first rap song to win in these prestigious awards. Also, our own former governor and president, Jimmy Carter, won in the spoken word category for his book, Faith, A Journey for All. This was his 3rd win in this category. A good night for Georgia. Thank you.
House will continue to be in order. Chair recognizes Representative Wilson to introduce the Doctor of the Day.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. It's my privilege to introduce Dr. Nega Rasuli for Doctor of the Day. She is an endocrinologist with the Kaiser Permanente of Georgia and Southeast Permanente medical groups. Since 2007, she's been caring for patients at her office in the Cumberland Medical Center, Emory University Hospital Midtown, Emory St. Joseph's Hospital, and Northside Hospital. She voluntarily provides services at Grady Memorial Hospital 2 to 3 weeks each year. Dr. Rasuli was born in Naples, Italy. She received her medical degree from Tehran University of Medical Science. After graduating, she moved here to America to complete her medical education, completing residencies in internal medicine at the Mount Sinai St. Luke's West Hospital Center in New York, and an endocrinology fellowship at the University of Arkansas for Medical Science in Little Rock. She is board certified in endocrine, diabetes, and metabolism. Please help me welcome Dr. Nega Rasuli.
Good morning. Thank you very much for that kind introduction. It's both a pleasure and a great privilege to be here. I'm grateful for the opportunity to provide care, specifically diabetes care, to our Georgian citizens. As you may know, 1.5 million Americans diagnosed each year with diabetes. 1 out of 10 in Georgia at risk of developing type 2 diabetes. So if you want to know if you are at risk of getting type 2 diabetes, please stop by at medical aid station. Ms. Julie, our nurse, and myself, we actually give you a questionnaire with 5-7 questions based on American Diabetes Associations, and we help you to determine if you are at risk. We also offer free glucose checking, which is finger stick. I promise you, it's not painful. We'll give you some recommendations. It's all free. Thank you.
We're about to recognize some very distinguished guests that are with us. Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 163.
House Resolution 163 by Representative Bennett, the 94th, Hughley, the 136th, Kendrick, the 93rd, and Bernal, the 77th. A resolution recognizing February 11th, 2019 as the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated Day at the state capitol and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Representative Bennett and Representative Hughley for an invite resolution.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the distinguished members of the House. Today, on behalf of Representative Carolyn Hughley, Representative Darshan Kendrick, and myself, Representative Karen Bennett, we have the honor to recognize and welcome members of the Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated under the leadership of our esteemed leader, Mrs. Carolyn G. Randolph, our 19th South Atlantic Regional Director. Today is AKA Day at the Capitol, and I'd like to ask the members seated in the balcony to please stand and be recognized. I'd like to ask our 19th Regional Director, the first Regional Director from Georgia in 9 years, so we are excited to have her with us today. Mrs. Randolph.
Mr. Speaker, members of the House, and to the members of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated, good morning. I am Carolyn Randolph, a member of Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated from Columbus, Georgia. I represent the region called South Atlantic Region, which encompasses 3 states, Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. Today, we are here with representatives from the state of Georgia, where we have approximately 7,000 members, 66 chapters in this state. 18 of those chapters are undergraduate chapters that are on the campuses throughout the state of Georgia. We would like to thank you for the opportunity to spend this day with you in sessions. In past years, we came when you were not in session. So we look forward to having the opportunity to have some time with various representatives. We have a component of our sorority that is called the Connections Committee, and they make sure that we stay abreast of all legislative policies. And so again, thank you for the opportunity this morning, and we look forward to speaking to you one-on-one, and thank you for representing us. Thank you.
Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 70.
House Resolution 70 by Representative Jones of the 47th, Martin of the 49th, and Robichaux of the 48th. A resolution commending the Blessed Trinity Catholic High School Titans for winning the 2018 Class 4A GHSA State Football Championship and for others.
Chair recognizes the Speaker Pro Tem of the House, Jan Jones, Chairman Chuck Martin, and Representative Robichaux for an invite resolution.
Please join me in welcoming Blessed Trinity Catholic High School football team and coach Tim McFarland, the 4A football champions this year, and this is the second back-to-back championship for this team, which the school was formed in 2000, and they have an incredible academic history, but also in sports. And I'd like to please join me in welcoming the team. They're up here in the gallery. Please stand. Thank you. It's an incredible group of young men and coach as well. Coach McFarland, if you'd say a few words.
Thank you, Representative Jones. I would just like to thank Representative Jones and Martin for having us here today. This is certainly an honor for us and quite a privilege for not just our players, but also our administration to be here today as well. With me on the podium is our principal, Ms. Kathy Lancaster, our president, Mr. Brian Marks, our athletic director, Mr. Ricky Turner, and then, of course, the most important people here today are the guys that have done this for us 2 years in a row, and that's these players. So on behalf of our school, Representative Jones, thank you very much for having us here today.
Clerk will read the caption to House Resolution 139.
House Resolution 139 by Representative Taylor of the 173rd Parish, the 158th, LaHood of the 175th, Newton 123rd, Corbett of the 174th, and others. A resolution recognizing February 11, 2019 as Community Health Centers Day and commending the Georgia Primary Care Association and for other purposes.
Chair recognizes Chairman Darlene Taylor. Looks like she's joined by Representative Mark Newton for an invite resolution. Chairman Taylor.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members of the House. Today we're celebrating Community Health Center Day. The mission of the Community Health Center system is to improve access to comprehensive primary health care services for the medically underserved Georgians. Community health centers are also known as federally qualified health centers because they receive grant dollars to assist in providing health care to the uninsured and underinsured. Community health centers in Georgia began their work over 50 years ago, partnering with communities to bring access to health care in areas that are medically underserved. Currently, there are 34 separate and distinct health centers organizations. All of them are nonprofit 501c3 governed by local boards of directors that are comprised of community leaders and patients. Collectively, these 34 organizations have over 225 clinic sites in 120 Georgia counties. Many of these clinics are in rural communities where there is limited access to health care and high poverty rates. I will share that my community has 2 of these centers. We have expanded to include maternity care. We actually have a center in our school system. Over the past 17 years, Georgia has experienced tremendous growth of the healthcare center system, more than doubling the number of clinics serving Georgia's underserved population and poor, uninsured, including Medicaid. In 2018, over 600,000 patients were served by Georgia's community health centers, and they are the highest large and safe providers of primary care for these patients. From an economic standpoint, Georgia's community health care centers employ over 3,500 individuals with an estimated annual payroll of $137 million. Community health centers save the state's Medicaid program 33% in annual spending per Medicaid patient. I want you to know that the Medicaid dollars spent for patient care in community health centers helps the state to meet its budget challenges. Patients seen in community health centers result in savings through chronic disease management and the reduction of unnecessary ER visits, thus affording relief for the overcrowded emergency rooms. As you can see by the maps that each of you have on your desk, every member's constituents are served by community health centers. Again, the majority of health centers serve rural communities. We appreciate all you do for the people of Georgia, and today we have with us the community health centers from all over the state. Please join me in recognizing this important group, some of whom are on in the gallery and on the floor. Thank you for what you do to help us meet the healthcare needs of Georgia citizens. Now I'd like to introduce Sarah Lang, President of the Association.
Thank you, Representative Taylor and Speaker. And thank you, members of the House. Again, I'm Sarah Lang. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Valley Healthcare System in Columbus, Georgia, and the current chair of the Georgia Primary Care Association, the association that represents the 34 individual community-owned local organizations providing primary care. One of the major focus that the community health centers, as we look at the communities we serve, we have incorporated what is called an integrated service delivery model, meaning as we look at the communities we serve, we identify the needs in those areas. We provide primary care, medical care, OB, GYN services, dental care, pediatric services. We have our own, some of us have our own pharmacies, our own vision care. We've incorporated behavioral health care. And in my site, we recognize that there's not always a provider of behavioral health available, so we've incorporated telepsychiatry within our services as well. We thank you for supporting us over these years, and we want to work with you as we identify the needs and provide access to care for those underserved, those that fall through the cracks as they seek health care for themselves and their families. Again, thank you so very much for inviting us today.
We are incredibly honored to have on the floor a former member of this body, now a distinguished, we never thought we would say distinguished in front of his name, but I want you to welcome back former representative and now Superior Court Judge Dusty Hightower. We are going on to the rules calendar. All members will please take their seats. All members. The House will be at order. The clerk will read the caption to House Bill 62.
House Bill 62 by Representative Cooper, the 43rd, and others. To be entitled an act to amend Article 1 of Chapter 1 of Title 31 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated relating to general provisions relating to health, so as to require certain notice in a mammogram report to patients with dense breast tissue. This bill having referred to the Committee on Health and Human Services, that committee recommends that this bill do pass.
Chair recognizes the Chair of the Health and Human Services Committee, Chairman Cooper, to present the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen of the House, today I bring for your consideration a substitute to House Bill 62. This bill is titled Margie's Law, for Margie Singleton, who is with us in the balcony today with her also her Margie's Army, and was introduced earlier by Representative Hitchens. The legislation simply directs the health care facility, which includes the radiologist and wherever a lady goes for her mammogram, to include in their report that goes to the patient the summary. It's not really a report, it is a summary. When they send that to the patient, that it includes the information that you find on lines 25 to 35. It will tell the woman if she has dense breast tissue. Dense breast tissue occurs in about 40 to 50% of women, and it makes it extremely difficult for the radiologist to detect cancer. It sort of looked like looking through a very dense forest. And our old technology sort of gave a one straight-on view of that. Now, luckily, we now have a new type of mammogram. It's a 3D, which is becoming much more common across our state, which gives a panoramic view. But even that is not always enough. And so what this bill does, it directs them to put that information and in the summary that goes to the woman, and then not to scare the woman, but to encourage her when she gets this summary that if she has dense breast tissue, that she discuss it with her physician if she needs further tests to see if she has breast cancer. Dense breast tissue has just been found to conclusively indicate that dense breast tissue can actually cause cancer, and women that have it are 4 to 6 times more likely to develop cancer. This language is the same that we find in several other states and has the full support of radiologists in our state. So, Mr. Speaker, if there are no questions, I will ask my colleagues to vote favorably for this bill, and I yield the well.
You have a question if you care to yield.
I'll yield for one question.
Chair recognizes Representative Gertler to your left for a question.
Did the gentlelady yield?
Yes, sir, and before you ask it, I failed to say that men can also have the same problem and they can have dense breast tissue. Thanks. If that was your question, Representative Gertler.
No, that's not my question, but is it not true that no matter how good of an intention this bill is, which I agree with the intention, that this is a mandate upon doctors? And is it further not true that if we ever want to have a free market in our healthcare system, that this is adding to that, even though it matter very little bit, though?
Representative Gertler, I respect your opinion, but obviously we have a different one. They already send a summary, so all they have to do is add a little more type to the page to put this information out. And if it saves life, it's worth it. Mr. Speaker, I yield well. Thank you for your question, Representative.
We have some members who have signed up to speak, and the chair recognizes Chairman Silcox to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I come today to thank Margie and all the ladies who have worked so hard to bring this bill to the well today, as well as to Chairman Cooper for sponsoring this bill. As a childhood cancer survivor myself and a woman who has had a false positive on a mammogram, this bill has personal meaning for me. My physician encouraged me to have further testing due to dense breast tissue, and an ultrasound proved that I did not have a tumor, but it could have gone differently. I believe this bill will be a second chance and perhaps a life-saving measure for many women in the state of Georgia. Thank you very much.
Chair recognizes Representative Hughley to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and ladies and gentlemen of the House. I'm so pleased to see this bill today. For you see, I've been working on this issue since 2015, and women all over the country have a problem. And I became interested in this bill because I have dense breast tissue myself. I've had 3 biopsies. I can't remember the last time that I had a mammogram that did not come back requiring additional information and additional testing. So I introduced this bill in 2015, no movement. I introduced it again last year, no movement. And I guess the right kind of people had to be affected by this for us to move it forward. But I'm certainly happy that we're moving forward with this bill today. And I want to thank my doctor, Dr. Richard Bloom in Columbus, for alerting me that other women have this problem and it is something that we need to address. So thank you very much, and I encourage everyone to support the measure.
We applause. Chair recognizes Representative Bonnie Rich to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Ladies and gentlemen, I come today to encourage you to vote yes for House Bill 62. As you heard earlier, at least 40% and possibly up to 50% of women over the age of 40 have a finding of dense breast tissue. And this finding is recognized in routine mammograms that should be performed annually. Unfortunately, there are many women who have mammograms and have walked away with a clean bill of health because the dense breast tissue made it difficult for the cancerous findings to be recognized by the radiologist. This bill will ensure that those women who are at additional risk, who do have dense breast tissue, will know that that finding had been made on their mammogram. This will give them the opportunity to discuss with their physician any family history that they may have or other risk factors, and possibly even have additional screenings, including an ultrasound or MRI. In addition, our health department has been attempting to get more women to have annual screenings. It's very likely that if a woman finds out she is at an added risk because she has dense breast tissue, she will be more likely to comply and have the annual screenings, and it will have a result of having more women who are detected early and remain healthy and there for their families. 30 other states have passed similar legislation, so I encourage you to vote yes for this, so that women will have the knowledge that we need to be active participants in our health care in this area. Thank you.
Chairman Cooper, did you wish to have the chair's time? Chair recognizes, well, let's call the previous question. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered on House Bill 62? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. Chair recognizes Chairman Cooper for the chair's time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. One of the reasons that we had a delay is this, and I'm very cautious in my committee until I have absolute certainty of whether statements are true. And it is only recently that it has been proven conclusively that dense breast actually leads to increased cases of cancer. And that was a statement that was being made that I wanted to make sure was true. The other thing, this new technology, which is the 3D mammograms, is only now becoming available pretty widespread in our state. There's still a lot of places where it needs to be more convenient for women, and it's growing daily. But a couple of 3 years ago, it was almost non-existent, except in the metro area, and not out in our rural areas of Georgia, where it would be available to most women without a long trek. The other thing I would say is thank you to women on both sides of the aisle that have come to me thanking me for this bill. We had a pastor that talked about just imagine. And what I would say to all of us, just imagine what we in this house could accomplish if we really don't care who gets credit for it. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Previous question having been ordered, is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 62 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. What purpose does Representative Beverly rise? He waves off. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machines. On the passage of House Bill 62, the ayes are 166, the nays are 1. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Clerk will read the caption to House Bill 23.
House Bill 23 by Representative Houston of the 170th and others, to be entitled an act to amend Title 46 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to public utilities and public transportation so as to specifically authorize electric membership corporations and their affiliates to provide broadband services. This bill having been referred to the committee. On Economic Development and Tourism, that committee recommends that this bill do pass.
The chair recognizes Chairman Houston to present House Bill 23. Just a moment, Madam Chair. Lady may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. As the Rural Development Council traveled all over this state for the past 2 years, listening to concerns of Georgia rural citizens, one thing that was quite evident, the limited access of broadband. And you and I both know that broadband has become as important in the infrastructure as roads have in some areas if you want economic development. And part of the thing that we were charged with the Rural Council was to bring economic development to rural areas. This gives not Colquitt EMC, that's the one I happen to represent. This gives the Georgia EMCs the right to participate in broadband. It removes any legal questions that EMCs have the right to participate in broadband. As you probably know, there's some grants coming up, and we'd like to take advantage of these grants so we can get broadband out to rural areas. If I don't have any questions, I yield the well and ask you to vote favorable on this bill.
You do not have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the well.
Chair recognizes Chairman Parsons to speak to the bill.
Oh, thank you, Speaker, ladies and gentlemen. I've thought a lot about this legislation over the last couple of weeks since I first heard about it. First of all, I want to say for Chairman Houston, I appreciate the work that she's put into it, and I know she's worked hard with this. We both served on the, I've served as a ad hoc or a assigned member of the Rural Development Council, and been before that, I guess that was 3 years ago, I co-chaired a study committee with Senator Gooch on the need for rural broadband. So it's something that I've become familiar with, and here again, I appreciate the work that Chairman Houston has put into it. And there is the need for it is overwhelming, really, when you go out to these rural areas. And I've been throughout the state, both with the here again the study committee and the Rural Development Council, and I know the need. And I have friends. I have many, but a lady who was our administrative assistant down in appropriations a few years ago emailed me the other day and said, Don, if there's anything you can do, he said, we have it, the people down the street or the next subdivision has broadband, but I can't get it. Is there anything that you can do to help me get it? And the need is certainly there. And during those study committee meetings that I was on here again 3 years ago, I had actually suggested and asked the EMCs, what can you do to help provide broadband in rural Georgia, because it does only make sense. They're already there in rural parts of the state, and they have infrastructure there to help provide that. They're there in those communities, and they're there throughout the state already providing service, and they have infrastructure there. So it only makes sense. And at that time, they came back, and I say they, not the EMCs, but people, different people representing them here, had said that, well, we don't know exactly. We're a little bit afraid to get in the broadband business because we're a membership corporation, so we don't want to put any financial burden onto our members by going into something that we're not even familiar with, we don't have the expertise in. And I had suggested at the time that at least maybe with the infrastructure that they have, that they provide that, the access to the poles, and even perhaps they would put up dark fiber and lease that out to other companies that could use that. Over time, they came and said what they would like to have would just be, in statute, the permission to provide broadband, even though they're already providing it in certain areas. Okay, I mean, they felt like they needed the approval and code to do that. Okay, I'm okay with that. That makes sense. So there is a value for EMCs to be involved in this, and I appreciate them. I appreciate them coming forward and wanting to be involved. But with this legislation, and like I say, I put a lot of thought into the bill, but also about what I would even do. Would I say anything? Would I just sit there? Would I take a walk? Maybe not even vote? Would I vote no? Would I vote yes? It doesn't really, no matter what you think about the bill, it wouldn't do any good to vote no, really. Wouldn't do any good for any of you to vote no unless you've already made up your mind to do that, really. There's a similar bill, in fact, the exact same language of this bill was introduced in the Senate, so that's over there, which gives me some concern, because if this bill passes, if we send it over there as it is, which we will, and the Senate has already said we have exactly the same bill, that it gives me some concern that it would pass in exactly with this exact same language, which it doesn't need to. It needs to be changed. And we talked over the years about sending legislation to the Senate to get it fixed, and that's always a risk anytime that you send anything over there, and I'm sure it's a risk for them to send things over here to get fixed. But the very first thing that I wanted to call your attention to in the bill is this, and I think it's significant, and I don't know why it's like this. I've asked this question a couple of times, and it makes no sense to me, and I think it's a danger in the bill, and that is the definition in this bill of broadband. The definition as it is in this bill is broadband services means a wired or wireless service that consists of the capability to transmit data to and from end users, and in combination with services to provide access to the internet. Well, that's not a definition of broadband. That's a definition of plain old telephone service. That is a definition of using dial-up. And I'm probably sure at some time or another we've all used dial-up. That's what that is. That's plain old telephone service. A dial-up telephone can do that. Yes, you get connectivity to the internet. I don't know why they have it in here like that, but what it really does is provides the EMCs the permission it would in statute to not only provide broadband if they wanted to, but they don't have to. If they provide it, they can provide any kind. What I call this bill the any band bill. That's what it is. It's an any band bill, not broadband. They can provide bad broadband service. If they have the permission in the language of this bill, if it's in statute, they do not have to provide any level of broadband that customers would find acceptable whatsoever. I don't know why it's in there like that. It needs to be changed, and hopefully it'll get changed in the Senate. There are no requirements in the bill for the MCs to do anything. They don't have to provide broadband service to unserved or underserved areas. It doesn't require them to do anything, to provide, not only they can provide any level that they would want to, but they can provide it to areas and to customers that already have it. It doesn't require them to go in non-served or underserved areas. That's something that if we're going to allow them to do it, they need to have a requirement to provide it to the people that don't have it or have poor service to begin with. They can market whatever service that they do decide to provide. This gives them the ability, when somebody calls in to get new electric service or to make some change or whatever, there is nothing at all that prevents, in fact, I'm sure this is part of what they want. It then allows the EMC customer representative to say, oh, by the way, we now provide broadband service, or we even provide plain old telephone service. We can provide you a better deal than what your provider is providing now. I think what would happen with this is literally the EMCs would have the capability, they would have the permission in statute to provide service, cherry pick service, to those people that already receive the service and not to the people who really want the service and need it. There is some money coming available. There's grants already out there. There's been grants from FCC. There's been grants from the Department of Agriculture before regarding broadband. There's been millions of dollars brought into the state. This money that's going to be available, I think that Chairman Houston spoke of it, I believe. But the money that will be available through the Department of Agriculture, that's nothing new. And I can't tell you right now, I had it, but I lost my notes on it, but the total amount of money that will be available across this country sounds significant, but when it's broken down to states, the amount of money that could come to these EMCs to help subsidize for whatever, I would only suppose that the Farm Bill has requirements to who they provide money, to provide service to with that money, but it would not be that significant. It's not nearly as significant as what we would think or what we would hope it would be. So what you really would have, I'm afraid, is you're going to have EMCs, under this legislation anyway, who can go out and offer broadband service to people in areas where they already have it, but give them a better deal because they're getting subsidized with taxpayer money, using facilities that they built because they got a right-of-way from the government. They got eminent domain provided to them from the government, and now they're getting subsidized by the federal government. I think that probably, the most disappointed people, the people who would be disappointed with the passage of this bill, if this passes if this is what passes, if this is what goes to the Senate and what ends up passing over there, the people who are going to be disappointed are going to be the people like I just spoke of, the former administrative assistant that called me, the people that need broadband and they still don't have it. They still won't have it because there's nothing in this bill that requires that to happen. Now there is one other issue, well there's probably a lot of other issues, but there's the issue of pole attachments, which isn't addressed in this bill, but it really should have been. Those EMCs have those facilities, they have the infrastructure out there that they've gotten through with government help, but they won't make any allowances for other companies, cable companies, telephone companies, mom and pop companies. And by the way, there's a lot of mom and pop companies out there. It's not just the big AT&Ts and Windstreams and people like that to provide broadband service. There are a lot of mom and pop companies out there that do that. And this is going to hurt them. This is going to hurt some of those companies if it passes like this. I think I've said pretty much everything I had planned to say. I didn't really plan to say anything because I really thought about whether I even come up here. And I wouldn't ask anybody to vote against this unless you just feel like you need to do it. It's Chairman Houston's bill. I know that the Rules Chairman has also been involved in it. I don't want to put anybody in a position where they feel like that they might have issues later on getting legislation passed all the way through. That's nothing against the Rules Chairman at all. I'm just saying I just don't want to put I don't want to be the one that puts you in a position like that. I don't really care for myself. We had a representative here a few years ago, Dan Lackley, and I remember him coming up here, and he was a character. He was from down in Peachtree City, and I think he took his full amount of time, and when he first got up, he said, I don't know how I feel about this bill yet. I don't know whether I'm going to vote yes or no. He went for about his whole 15 minutes talking about the bill, mostly negative, and he finally at the end said, you know what, I've talked myself into it. I'm going to vote against this bill. Well, I haven't talked myself into that, but I just wanted to come up because I think these things needed to be pointed out. I don't want to get myself in particular in a position where I couldn't be on a conference committee, Representative Williams. So I know you and you have that same concern. We don't want to be in that position either. But unless you feel like that you want to vote against it, that's your business. I'm not going to try to talk anybody into doing that. But I did want to come up and point out things I felt like I had a responsibility to. Mr. Chairman, I yield the will. Mr. Speaker, I yield the will. I'm sorry.
You had questions. Do you care to yield?
Yes. I do. I'll yield.
Chair recognizes Representative Anulowicz to your left for a question.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Does the gentleman yield?
Yes, ma'am, I do.
Isn't it true that many of our current broadband providers are a little bit anxious about this new entrant into the market because these existing providers already attached their wires to EMC infrastructure?
I would imagine so. I haven't talked to but a couple of the providers, but I think it would be, yeah.
And does the gentleman further yield?
Yes, I do.
Is it further true that EMCs already charge sometimes 3 to 4 times more than other utility pole owners in our state for the use of this critical infrastructure?
I believe that is true, yes.
Does the gentleman further yield?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Finally, isn't it true that the formula and standard rates that the FCC uses to determine the fees for poles has been litigated for decades and has been upheld by the United States Supreme Court as just, reasonable, and fully compensatory?
I'm sure that is true. I don't have any knowledge of it, but I'm sure that is true if that's what the lady thinks, yes.
Thank you, sir.
You have one more question if you care to yield.
Yes, sir.
Chair recognizes Representative Al Williams to your left for a question.
Will the gentleman yield?
Yes, sir, I do.
To my friend in the well, is it not so that you've had me on a little emotional roller coaster? And for clarification, are you for it or against it?
Thank you for the question. It's a very fair question. I am for the effort that this bill is about. I'm going to vote for the bill. I wanted to express my issues and my concerns with the bill. It needs to be changed in the Senate, but you know, I don't want to be somebody that's actually voting against something, first of all, that people all across this state are thinking is going to help them. And I'm going to vote for the bill, but I did want to definitely voice my concerns with it.
The gentleman further yield?
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much for letting me get out my car. But, and I appreciate, that's a very unique way. I like how you've been in the well. I'm going to try to emulate it one day. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
No further questions.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield the will.
The chair recognizes the chairman of the House Rules Committee, Chairman Powell, to speak to the bill.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. There'll be no question at the end of my remarks whether I'm for it or against it. As Chairman Houston has so ably pointed out, this was part of the Rural Development Council's initiative based on our conversations over the past 2 years with citizens and local governments all over the state of Georgia. What we found out was that broadband is essential to almost every factor in economic development. You cannot create jobs unless you have a health care system. You cannot create jobs unless you have an educated workforce. You cannot create jobs if you don't have the ability to have businesses located in an area. And guess what's essential to all of that? You cannot have telemedicine unless you have broadband. You cannot have adequate education in today's educational system unless you've got broadband. You cannot have a business expansion or retention unless that business has access to broadband. It is essential. There are a lot of things that we need to do to make rural Georgia viable.
but the keystone to a lot of these things are broadband. And that is why we have focused on broadband for the last 2 years. Last year, this legislature passed a bill that was initiated in the Senate that did two things. Number one, it put in the structure for a grant program to incentivize providers to go into unserved areas that are not economically viable. The second thing that we did was to institute a mapping program so that we could actually determine what areas of the state are unserved and what areas are served. One of the things that we also tried to do last year was to give the authority to the EMCs to provide broadband service. Now, you may ask, why is this important? Why are we spending so much time on it? If you look at a map of Georgia, and if you look at a map of rural Georgia, there is already infrastructure in place that is infrastructure of the EMCs that is available to serve the actual communities that are unserved now. And so what we want to do is not to provide an advantage to any particular industry or any particular provider, but we want to recognize that the more providers we have out there, that the more likelihood that somebody is going to provide service in rural Georgia. And certainly the people who have poles already in place would be one of those that we could do that. So we had a bill last year, and this bill we tried to solve everybody's problem. The people who objected to pole line attachment rates, we addressed that. As a matter of fact, we put in FCC rates in rural unserved areas. And then that wasn't enough, so we put in FCC rates in served areas if the EMCs decided to serve and compete. But that wasn't enough either. It got bogged down, and we've lost a whole year because we tried to satisfy everybody. So this year, what this bill does is it's more of a bare bones attempt, strictly authorization. I understand that there's another bill that either has been dropped or will be dropped that deals with pole line attachments and deals with some of these other issues. But we don't want to let happen what happened last year, which is that we got bogged down and nothing got passed. So this is a bare bones bill, but it also does provide some protections. It prevents cross-subsidization, which means that you cannot use your electric revenues or your natural gas revenues to subsidize or to make you anti-competitive in the broadband business. It's got to stand on its own, or it cannot stand at all. Another thing that's put in there to protect consumers is it prohibits the ability of an EMC to cut off electricity for the failure of somebody to pay their broadband bill. And then the other thing that is prohibited in here is what's called an illegal tying arrangement, which you cannot require an electric customer to take your broadband service. They either take it or they don't, but you can't require them to take it as a condition for taking the electric service. So all of these things were intended to make this bill consumer friendly, but also to give the authorization. And why is it important? Number one, we need as many providers as possible in rural areas. But number two, there is a pot of money that's been alluded to at the federal level, and you get points if your state has authorized EMCs specifically to provide that service. If there's no provision for that service in state statute, then the EMCs lose points in any kind of application. So this is needed. It really is needed. So I would encourage you to support this bill. It is essential in what we're trying to do in rural Georgia. Rural broadband is essential for any kind of economic development in rural Georgia. It's a good bill. I urge your favorable consideration. I yield the will.
You have a question if you care to yield. Gentleman has yielded the will. Is there any objection to the previous question being ordered? The chair hears none. The previous question is ordered. For the chairman's time, the chair recognizes Chairman Ron Stevens, who I understand will yield a portion of his time.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 5 minutes to the gentleman from the 154th, gentleman from Albany.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mr. Speaker. I come before you this morning, and I'm not confused at all as to my position on this bill, and I hope it would be your position also. I am unequivocally in support of this legislation. You see, it was in the late 1930s when in rural Georgia, in rural America, 90% of the households did not have electricity. But it was only until the Rural Electrification Association was established under President Roosevelt that we got lights. I live in rural Georgia. I grew up in rural Georgia. I'm from a small town called Hopeful, Georgia, in southwest Mitchell County. That's in our rules chairman's district. It is a place where we have only one store, but we were hopeful. There is a pot of money that has been established. Many of the speakers have alluded to that. $600 million. The feds, everybody understands that rural band in South Georgia, broadband in rural America is essential for growth and development. So the federal government has established $600 million that they are providing just for that cause. $200 million is in the form of grants. $200 million is in the form of loans. And $200 million is in the form of grants and loans. But there are certain things that the people of the state of Georgia, particularly our EMCs, are placed at a disadvantage because our legislature has not acted or have failed to act to make certain provisions clear, which this bill does. There is also $1.7 billion that has been allocated to address this particular concern. We need mapping, which we've done. We need to authorize EMCs such that they can compete in this arena. Now, a lot of people are saying that this it has a problem when it comes to competition with other people, that they can't come in and they can't serve our particular areas. Well, if they wanted to come in and they felt like they wanted to be in rural Georgia, they would be there now. But the children that I represent in rural Georgia don't even have the internet. Think about it. Children who can't get on Facebook. They can't Snapchat. They can't tweet. They can't do their homework. Representative Hewley, I was getting to that too, you know. But you know they're doing Facebook first. Not only them, but families, children are being left behind because they don't have access. The businesses in our community, you have to have your ability to just Google. You have an issue with something, you don't have an opportunity to go on the World Wide Web to solve a particular problem. The farmers in our community, listen, farming now has become so sophisticated until they have to have access for so that they can make real-time decisions on when they're going to plant, how they're going to plant, and how they're going to service their constituents and run their business. And you know, for us, listen, farming is not entirely in our part of the state. It's a way of life. You see, because these are the people who provide us with food, clothing, and shelter. They don't just do it for the people of Georgia or the people of the country, but they do it for the people of the world. The largest industry in this state is being hampered because we cannot come up with a mechanism to provide them with access. And the biggest concern I have heard is that some people have an issue about whether or not how much money they're going to be charged on a pole. My 5 minutes are up. A pole that they're not even using today. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to rural Georgia, it just does something to me. I mean, you know, and it really does, because I represent kids in Seminole County, in Baker County, in Miller County, and I know the challenges that they go through with. Now, I'm going to ask that you support this bill, and I'm going to ask that you show that the children and the people of my community, that this Georgia legislature is with them. Mr. Speaker, having no time remaining, I yield the well.
The gentleman has yielded the well. What purpose does Representative Bentley rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true, Mr. Speaker, that not only would this legislation help the farmers and other industries across the state of Georgia, but it also help the funeral industry? For this legislation, and I mean that for real, this legislation will also help the funeral industry to help those families that are in northern states that cannot come to the south for a funeral, and we can live stream those funerals if we have broadband throughout the state of Georgia. And is it not further true, Mr. Speaker?
I want him to come to mine, okay?
Is it not further true, Mr. Speaker, that I represent very small rural communities in my district? I have the city of Dooling, Georgia, population less than 200 in my district, and I will be voting in favor of House Bill 23.
The previous question has been ordered. Is there any objection to adopting the committee substitute? The chair hears none. The committee substitute is adopted. Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of the committee, which was favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Shall this bill now pass? All those in favor of the passage of House Bill 23 will vote aye. Those opposed will vote no, and the clerk will unlock the machines. Have all members voted? If so, the clerk will lock the machine on the passage of House Bill 23. The ayes are 169. The nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. The clerk will read the caption to a group of privileged resolutions.
Commending the Greater North Fulton Chamber of Commerce, honoring the life and memory of William W.T. Henry Sr., recognizing and commending the contributions of the immigrants and refugees in Georgia, recognizing and commending the contributions of Asian Americans, advancing justice, Atlanta and Georgia, commending Atlanta Motor Speedway for stimulating the economy and providing entertainment and enjoyment to NASCAR fans, recognizing and honoring the Georgia Association of Broadcasters, honoring Linda Brannon Williamson and the Linda Brannon Williamson Women's Leadership Academy, recognizing February 27, 2019 as Lupus Advocacy Day at the State Capitol, recognizing and commending the Dental College of Georgia at Augusta University on the occasion of its 50th anniversary, saluting the 125th graduating class of Gainesville High School, recognizing February 10th through 16, 2019 as Georgia Court Reporting and Captioning Week at the State Capitol, honoring the life and memory of Michael Allen Mack Collins, and for other purposes. That completes the reading of the privilege resolutions.
Is there any objection to adopting the privileged resolutions? The chair hears none, and the resolutions are adopted. We're going on now to announcements. If you have signed up for an announcement, make your way to the front of the chamber. The chair recognizes the chair of the Minority Caucus, Chairman Beverly, for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House Minority Caucus will meet tomorrow at 1 p.m. in room 216. Very important meeting tomorrow. I'll let you know again tomorrow, but tomorrow, 216 at 1 p.m. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Buckner for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The House Democratic Caucus is having a meeting today at 2 in CLOB 505. It is a primer on Medicaid and CON. There are some of us that might need refreshing about what all that means. So everyone's welcome. There will be speakers at 2 o'clock, 505 CLOB. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Lumsden for an announcement.
There will be a meeting of the Lumsden Subcommittee of Public Safety and Homeland Security today at 1 o'clock in CLOB 606. We have 3 bills to consider. 1 o'clock, 606 CLOB.
Chair recognizes Chairman Welch for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have 2 announcements. One is going to be at 1 o'clock today in CLOB 605. The Welch Subcommittee on Judiciary will be reviewing a bill, House Bill 81, and then at 3 o'clock we will meet the Public Safety Subcommittee on Appropriations. We will meet in room 406 CLOB from 3 o'clock to 5 o'clock. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Chairman Fleming for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now that we've talked about broadband, let me talk to you about broadening your waist. The probate judges have lunch for us down in 132 Judiciary. As usually they brought varsity for us. So if you'd like to have some good varsity hot dogs, come on down to first floor of the Capitol, room 132 Judiciary for our probate judges who will be serving lunch for us. Thank you so much.
Chair recognizes Chairman Pruitt for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, the State Planning and Community Affairs Committee will meet at 2 o'clock in 403. It's going to be a very interesting presentation by DCA, and anybody would like to attend, you're welcome. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Henson for an announcement.
Good afternoon. I'd just like to announce that DeKalb County House delegation will be meeting today upon adjournment in room 230 in the Capitol.
Chair recognizes Chairman Darlene Taylor for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members of the House, the Information and Audit Committee will meet today in room 415 at 1:30. Thank you.
Chair recognizes Representative Reeves for an announcement.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Reeves Subcommittee of Judiciary Non-Civil will meet at 2 o'clock in room 132 in the Capitol, and the Ed Setzler Subcommittee for Judiciary Non-Civil will meet at 3 o'clock in 132 of the Capitol.
That completes our announcements. The chair recognizes the majority leader of this House for a motion.
Mr. Speaker, I move that this House stand adjourned until 10 a.m. Tuesday, February the 12th, 2019.
The majority leader has moved that this House be adjourned until Tuesday, February 12, 2019. Also the birthday of Abraham Lincoln tomorrow. At 10 a.m., all those in favor of the motion will say aye. Those opposed will say no. The ayes have it, and this House is adjourned until Tuesday, February 12 at 10 a.m.